Thank you so much, and very warm welcome to Digital Europe's Masters of Digital breakout session on the future of connectivity. So great to see so many of you here, and I hope you had a nice morning. Very interesting discussions in the first panels, and also you had a nice coffee break. Had some time to network, to learn about each other. So great, really big audience today. So thank you. We are a little bit delayed, and actually this session stands in between of your lunch, actually. So we really want to finish on time to make sure that you have food. So maybe without further ado, let me introduce myself. So I am a Senior Director at Digital Europe. My name is Milda Basulita. I'm very proud today as we have a fantastic lineup of speakers with us. So let me please introduce the panelists. So we have a member of the European Parliament, Ms. Pilar del Castillo Vera. Welcome. We have a digital minister from Slovenia, Emilia Stojmenova-Duh. Welcome. We have Peter Weckesser, who is from Schneider Electric, the Chief Digital Officer. Very welcome. And also we have with us Rolf Werner from Nokia, who is the head of Europe. Welcome. And finally, we have Christian Leon from Ericsson, who has a global role covering many countries. So a very warm welcome to all of you. And today is really a very timely panel that we are having, actually, because in a few minutes, I believe we will have a big announcement from the European Commission announcing its white paper on the future of connectivity. So, of course, we are all awaiting for that. But, of course, in the run-up to that, there was lots of work being done on connectivity and infrastructure. And we have the Digital Decade targets, and also we have the mirror targets in Digital Europe Manifesto, where we are saying that by 2030, Europe, everywhere and everyone in Europe should have access to gigabit internet, and also we are asking for 100% 5G coverage. Very ambitious target, but very important ones. And of course, given the situation in Europe, we really need to discuss how are we going to achieve these ambitious targets. So that's one thing that we want to talk about today, but also another thing is really the preparation for the rollout of potentially 6G, another big task for us all. So we also want to see how are we preparing for that. And with this, actually, before opening to the panelists, if I may ask the audience in the room, but also online, please go to the Slido. You already know how to do that. In the room, you just scan the QR code there, and there will be a question there asking, will Europe lead the way on 6G rollout? So whilst we speak with the panelists, please be so kind and answer this question, and we will look at the results a little bit later during the discussion. So without further ado, if I may kick off, and dear Pilar, if I first may ask you, as really a champion on connectivity files in Europe, you have lots of experience, and if I may ask, what was actually your biggest achievement that you are proud of as a politician, but also as Europe in general? Thank you very much.
Sorry. It was about me. Sorry, I was trying just to reconnect this because, I'm sorry.
No problem. No
Can you
problem.
please...
of course.
Again, I mean, is this an overview or what do you ask me? I'm so sorry.
No worries at all.
I was in, I mean, these days...
No worries at all.
Really complex.
I was just saying that as, of course, a champion on connectivity, you've been active in the last years very much on the key files in Europe, in the European Parliament. So what are your experiences and what are you mostly proud of?
Okay. Well, this debate, let me say that during this legislative term, since 2019 to now, it was outstanding, extraordinary, astonished how many digital files was delivered and are in place. I mean, all of them, practically all of them, had nothing to do with networks, but had to do with different aspects very related to digital technologies or digital technologies per se. On data, we have Data Governance and Data Act. On digital technology, we have AI. Then there is a number of them. Well, we have the digital identity and some others. But it was incredible because in a context where we had COVID, and then that's implying, that there was an impact on the possibility to produce these pieces and to go on with the debates and so on and so forth. And the landscape, you check on cybersecurity, on data, on digital technologies such as AI, this is amazing, the work that the three institutions, Commission preparing, proposing, the European Parliament and the Council, as two co-legislators, we were able to deliver. I think was very outstanding. It's important to start with this. Networks was, in comparison as it was in the past, in the previous legislative term and the other ones, not be touched upon. After the Code for Electronic Communication, there was nothing new on networks. But there were needs that come from the time ago, mostly what is related to the 5G investment and the possibility to have 100% 5G development. That was a concern, that it was present when we were debating in 2016, the Code for Electronic Communications. And other aspect related to that, the spectrum policy, also it comes from before that. I think, well, the idea that I had when I came here is to focus on three main aspects related to the huge debate on digital networks act that will be covered by the Digital Network Act. On the one hand, I thought that was interesting to focus on some points because it's, the scope is much more than that. One is on market fragmentation in the electronic communication sector. The other one was in the need for a more integrated spectrum policy and the need, finally, to finance the new demands on 5G. That was my three main focus for that. I am not going to consume all the time here because only for me in this fair intervention, but I will focus in next when the other speakers have also opportunity to go on. I will focus on these 3 points. I think market fragmentation in the electronic, because are interlinked at the end of the day in some way. Market fragmentation of the electronic communication sector, as I said, the need for a more integrated spectrum policy, which is an old song. We have to remember that in 2014, being Nelly Cruz the commissioner, there was a telecom single market as well dossier. A spectrum was included. Council decided that only they were ready to go to negotiation, to enter into interinstitutional negotiation if the proposal of a spectrum that the Commission put it on the table was withdrawn. So that was the case. We had to accept that. We have roaming in the same dossier, so we decided going only for roaming and net neutrality. But this reflects to what extent a spectrum in terms of go forward in a more coordinated, high coordination, more integration in Europe, in the European Union, is so difficult. I mean, to the point that there was so much the determination of Council of Member States that we couldn't even include this. That was, you know, a step forward that the Commission proposed at that time, 2014, 10 years ago. So everything that we can say here, it is an old song for me, for many of you, because we have been singing that song all the time and never really have any important, significant outcome. Although in the Code for Electronic Communication, there were some steps that we can really do in that sense. But we are basically as it was, you know, more than 10 years ago. So I will come back to all this.
Great, thank you very much, dear Pilar. I think it's excellent stock-taking exercise that you just did for all of us. So really appreciate that, and I think you mentioned many important points that, as you say, you know, we are discussing now, and the time is now. Of course, with the new European Commission and the new European Parliament coming in the next month, so the time is really, again, to pick up these debates. So thank you very much for that. And of course, you mentioned spectrum policy. And with that, if I may turn to Emilia, I know that actually Slovenia is a big champion of allocating spectrum bands. You did a fantastic job there. If I get my numbers right, I think you allocated 98% of bands in Slovenia compared to only, I think, 68 average in Europe, so really well done. But you still have challenges, I understand, when it comes really to the rollout of 5G. And if you can maybe a little bit, you know, touch upon those. So first of all, maybe, you know, how are you so successful, and what are still the challenges that lay ahead? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you also for inviting me to this great event. So when we are speaking about data, we always need the context if we want to understand the real, if we want to have the information there. So you mentioned that in Slovenia, in 2021, we assigned 98% of the spectrum. And this is the main reason why the rollout is not there yet. So once the spectrum was assigned, the things went very fast. So in the first year, the numbers were 37% of coverage by 5G. Then in just 1 year, it increased for additional 27%, which means in the last DESI index, it was 64%. But the latest number from our regulator for the third quartile of the last year showed that we already have 80% of 5G coverage of our households, which means it was not about the challenges that we had, but it was about the timing when the radio frequency, the frequencies were assigned. So it's definitely not about holding back the development or waiting for something, but it has to do with the timing of the allocation of the frequencies, and also with the dynamics of the investment also by the telecom operators. What we did is we assigned the 5G pioneer bands. So if we take a comparison with the other member states, for example, if we take a look at the countries that were significantly on the forefront in Europe, like Denmark or Netherlands or Italy, all of them have 90% of coverage with 5G. They have allocated their 4G frequencies for the 5G coverage. And what we did in Slovenia, we allocated the 5G pioneer bands. And we all know that the 5G pioneer bands, the performance is much better. So when we are speaking about technology also earlier today, we heard the word speed many, many times. I agree. We need to be fast, but with someone who did a lot of sports in the past, I would also like to say, yes, let's speed, let's be quick, but please don't hurry, because in some cases, and we see that in Slovenia now with the 5G pioneer bands, then the end result might be better if you wait for a while. What we are additionally doing, so as mentioned, we already have 80% of coverage of our households in the country. We do take additional measures. So last year we had severe floods in our country, and that's why the government decided that we we will use some reconstruction funds and we will fund open base stations in the flooded areas. Another thing what we are going to do is we are going to use some cohesion funds as well again, for the open base stations, because we believe this is the best possible way to get fast 5G coverage. And I'm sure that we will be able to achieve the goals, the targets, at least for the 5G coverage. So we know for the high-speed broadband is another case. Also, the costs are different. But when it comes to the 100% coverage by 2030, I'm sure that we will manage to do that.
Excellent. That's a very, very strong promise. So we will definitely remember, and great to see, of course, a country like Slovenia being one of the pioneers in that. So really, really fantastic. You spoke, of course, a lot on 5G, which is definitely something that is very important, of course, for our businesses here in the room. And I know that Rolf from Nokia knows very well his clients' needs and the demand of 5G. As you are working in sales and in marketing. So could you let us know a little bit more about the actual demand of 5G in Europe?
Of course. Thanks a lot for having me. Yeah, as such, I think the situation we have right now when it comes to 5G usage and the way Europe is set up, it's a little bit of a mixed bag, if you will. On the one hand, demand is pretty high, and we see the need for 5G exploitation when it comes to companies like Schneider Electric, who may be interested in, of course, factory layouts, use cases in IoT, so machine-to-machine connectivity, which is much better in a 5G environment. Once you think about slicing, for example, which, by the way, will only work once you use 5G standalone, as you just referred to, because this is the real 5G, and not using the 4G core or LTE core, which you simply make use of then the overall network of a 5G. So the issue indeed is having the real 5G standalone to come into play in Europe, for us not to lag behind when it comes to competitiveness compared to other regions like US, South Korea, Japan, who we compete with, also China, of course. And only by doing so we have a chance as Europe to properly compete when it comes to transforming our industries and applying interesting, let's say, applications. So just to give you a number, and it's from last year in August, from the 114 networks who say we use 5G or who have 5G in Europe, only 10 have 5G standalone. So that's still very small, and it needs a lot of investment. Why is investment not happening? Well, there are certain CapEx restrictions, if I may speak about my customers here. Of course, the issue sits that competition is very high. You have a lot of suppliers or CSPs in countries, whether it's 3 or 4 mobile network providers, and of course they're competing big time. ARPUs are much lower in Europe than you have it in other places. So when you look into Europe, ARPU is by average on a level of 15 euro, which is very low compared to a 42.5 in US. So investment is, by definition, easier to be done in places where you have a higher ARPU. And that's something where we all need to look for scale, we all need to look for stronger carriers and mobile network operators, and that's what they need for. They need more cash in and just be more on the healthier side of life when it comes to their business. And then we see transformation in industry, on the consumer side, and in the way we can drive digitalization. So I think that's very important. And one of the topics is definitely not only, to ask for, the exploitation of getting 5G by 2030. I would also love to see some more of a vendor consolidation, because all this scale is needed, and it can only happen once we see more mergers of vendors across Europe, which is not happening for now because of certain regulations. But I think that's a needed topic as well.
Great. Thank you very much, Rolf. And definitely you touched upon the very important topics and absolutely Europe's competitiveness in the world. And I think we have here Christian with Ericsson who has a global role and who in Ericsson and who really is very well placed to, let's say, compare Europe with the rest of the world. And could you share a bit your experiences? What are the positive examples that you see outside Europe that Europe could potentially consider adopting here? Thank you.
Now, just to build up on, I think I fundamentally agree with your view of what is happening, but just an anecdote to illustrate, let's say, the market dynamic. I think it was a few years ago when I was based in the US. A mobile network operator did not spend all of their capex on a given quarter, and that was reported in the financial market. The financial market reacted negatively. The share price went down because there is a fundamental fear that then the operators, the mobile network operators, is not investing to differentiate on performance. I would argue the same event on the stock market in Europe will probably lead to a stock price increase. And I think that's the fundamental of the scale effect. On the European side, you probably have more than 100 mobile network operators. So in average, each operator in each country has like 4 million subscribers. When you take the same in the US, there is 3 operators. They each have at least 90 million subscribers. Same thing in India. By the way, India ARPU is much lower than in Europe or in the US. But each operator has 300 million subscribers. In China, it's 400 million subscribers. So the scale is completely different. So operating at scale in a single market is what creates a return on investment, a return on invested capital for the operators, and that's what we don't have in Europe today. So today, if you take a mobile network operator, if you look at their invested capital and their return on invested capital versus the cost of capital, it's typically negative. So that does not create an underlying platform for building, I would say, a high-speed underlying backbone for 5G. And I also agree that it's important to think when we measure 5G coverage, it's not about having a logo for 5G. It's about having access to the right new spectrum and the right, I would say, digital new highways, which we call like 5G mid-band in the associated spectrum on standalone. That is the platform for innovation. And then my last comment, besides, I would say, the financial aspect is, I mean, there is regulation in a good way associated to net neutrality. Let's remember that 5G is an innovation platform for consumer, but also for industries. And today, I think there is uncertainty in like, how do we create, we call that technically a slice, but how do we differentiate the experience for the end users, whether it's an enterprise, whether it's a consumer, in the range, let's say, within the frame of net neutrality. And I think that uncertainty in the European market is probably not, it's actually, that uncertainty is slowing down the innovation in the back end. So that's also something I think collectively we have to address as we are building the right 5G. Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. Very fair points, I believe. And indeed, we are here also talking a lot about, of course, end users and the actual beneficiaries of the technology. And of course, Peter in Schneider Electric, you work a lot with that. You provide digital solutions to the industries that are in the process of digitalizing. And if we get it right in Europe, if we achieve the targets, what would be the business opportunities for the vertical sectors here in Europe? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Before I answer the question, I first want to make a statement that I think we are very happy in Europe that we have 2 companies like Ericsson and Nokia who are really world champions in providing the foundational technologies of connectivity, right? So this is not the case, as we heard in the earlier sessions, for all the technologies, but for communications and connectivity, we really have the foundational technologies. Now at Schneider, we are not in the communication business, but we are using these foundational technologies, obviously, and we are using them not only in Europe, but also around the world. And I'll want to paint a picture here a little bit that gives our view on the global adoption of 5G. First, we see a different speed of the industrial adoption in different geographies. Clearly, the fastest geography that we are observing is China these days, right? For various reasons, there is another global champion in China who creates foundational technologies, one of your competitors. China is moving fast on this, right? They are building also still more new factories in China than we build in Europe. So we see a faster adoption of this technology in China than we see this in Europe today. At Schneider, we operate around 20 private 5G networks for various factories. So we are actively in this journey. And the reason why I also see the speed in industry not at the level that was maybe expected has actually multiple reasons. The big advantages of 5G come with very high bandwidth availability, with low power consumptions, real-time capabilities, all great things that everybody needs. And at Schneider, we also believe in the connected everything, right? We want to connect the PLC, the drive, even the breakers should be connected in the future, the connected building, obviously. Now, in many of these industrial type applications, connectivity is still wired connectivity. So machines in a factory are for the most part wired up. Now, there's more and more mobile applications also in industrial applications like robots moving around. And this is clearly one of the big advantages where the technology has a USP when it comes to mobile. But most operators of factories are not willing to replace wired connection for the only reason that there's now a wireless connection availability. But in the next innovation cycle, and now we need to think of innovation cycles of factories more in terms of 10 to 20 years. Of course, these technology decisions will be relevant. And we are at Schneider definitely making these for our own factories. We operate around 200 factories worldwide. We are making these decisions very consciously. Whenever any factory is up for renewal, we want to build it on the latest technology that's available. So there is a huge opportunity for Europe and all other geographies in the world. There is a certain adoption cycle which is very difficult to change. And of course, this new technology will bring a lot of advantages. So in summary, I would say, first of all, we should be happy that we have an area where we really have leading companies in Europe that are creating foundational technologies. I would encourage all of you to apply these foundational technologies wherever they make sense in your businesses. We are definitely doing this at Schneider. And I want to end my short message here with also that this foundational technology of high bandwidth, very reliable, real-time wireless communication capabilities in 5G and in future in 6G allows us to rethink our technology platform, because we are moving away from the more proprietary solutions into open platform solutions on open architectures in hardware and software that have 5G capabilities built in, not only added on with a gateway which creates additional cost. So building this technology into our solutions will be certainly an accelerator in the future.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And indeed, good to speak about the future. And I think we also had a question at the beginning of the session to our audience about the future, about the rollout of 6G. I have the answers here. Could we see them on the screen, or it's in the end not possible? Okay, good. Apologies, connectivity issues must be. So the results to our question that we raised to the audience, the question was, will Europe lead the way on 6G rollout? So I have quite some answers, and the answer yes is 40%, whereas the answer no is 60%. So with that, it looks that our audience is a little bit pessimistic about the future. So what could we say to our audience to encourage them a little bit that we will lead the way? What could be done? And I know Christian was nodding to you. Do you want to comment on that? Do you have an answer?
I certainly can. I think what's interesting, you will ask the same question in the US or in China, the answer will be like, why are you asking the question? It's obviously yes. I think that's important. I think timing-wise, we're in the right timing to have these questions. I think it's the right time. I think if you look at the overall timing of technology that you can ingest in the next, let's say, cycle after 5G, it's probably 2030. The specification will come in like late 2028. And so that means today is the time where we're doing research. Today is the time that we're sitting together and trying to standardize and build an ecosystem behind this. And so for us to succeed, the number one, I would say, like a success factor is having one global standard. The reason why 4G and 5G were so successful and so fast in their adoption pace, and I would say very cost efficient quickly, it's because of one unique global standard. And I think we have a risk right now with 6G that we see fragmentation for many different, I would say, like geopolitical reasons. So one of the first, I would say, focus is about saying how do we keep one standard globally so that we have the economy of scale behind it. I think that's number one. Number two is, we mentioned it, is having a unified spectrum at the European level. When you look at how it happens with 4G or how it happened with 5G, each country came with a different timeline. Each country came with a different spectrum, with different rules on the spectrum, with different constraints on the bands. And that created, I would say, that created a lack of scale within the European market, whereas you don't see this in other territories. So I think these are the two key ingredients that we have to address today for us to succeed and be, I would say, a market leader in 2030 on 6G.
Great, thank you very much for sharing your views. I see that dear Pilar would like to comment, so
yes,
go ahead.
Well, one of the problems that the policymaker has when it is confronted with these companies is that, well, they have a very technical knowledge and broad knowledge of the issue, but very technical as well. So our action, it is not based in such a technical knowledge, but in the needs that, according to a number of facts and analysis, there are in the way that the public sector, the institutions can help the industry, in order to be more competitive, in order to develop better the innovation, and so on and so forth. So it is different approaches in that sense. So it is very good because I always learn constantly, from you in a very technical way. But the question is what we can do what we can do. We cannot regulate at all. That's an option. That's an option. A spectrum policy, of course, is not an option because it is something that is mandatory to be done by, member states. And I fully agree that we need an integrated European policy in spectrum. And we need that the licensing, it is more homogeneous. You don't want to harmonize at all, but at least to have a higher integration in many different related to licensing and related to another aspects. This is something that we have failed in getting such a minimum, at least, integrated spectrum policy in Europe. That's true. And there's a lot of resistance from member states, even from national regulators as well, many times. But it is something that should be done, and there is something to say on that from the side of policymakers. Then it comes the market fragmentation. What can you do in order to take advantage of an asset so fantastic that we have, which is a single market? Single market as a goal many times, not as a full reality, but it is absolutely indispensable. Without the single market, we cannot scale. Company cannot scale up, and then the possibilities to have that opportunity in order to compete globally, it is not there. I mean, if we have such a fragmentation of the single market, this is something that avoid and not boost the possibilities in order to really have a very competitive global industry, for example, and so on and so forth. In that context, we need networks. Networks, is absolutely indispensable. The traffic is increasing up to 30% yearly, now, and it will be more and more. And the industrial sector, among others, they need to be based on this capacity of the networks, the proper networks. I mean, we need the 5G one, because all this Internet of Things is absolutely related to add to this to start with. So, and then when we confronted this problem, we see that we have a competition policy. And the competition policy means that when you have more than 100 operators in Europe, 38 of them with 50.000 customers, 38 of them, which is only 7 in the United States, for example, then it's very difficult to really get the dimension that you need if you don't merge and you don't do anything, because it is something that, but then you confront another problem, that you have different culture, different things, that depends on member states and countries. They want to keep their own operators and so on and so forth. And we have the competition principles there. One of the things that has been commented in different fora is if that would be necessary to rethink on the competition principles, if we want to have the possibility for telecom operators to scale to the size they need to have more financial muscle, or if we don't do that, what other option we have? Because all this 5G has to be financed. In that sense, I am really looking forward for see what the Commission has to propose. I mean, it's a pity that this meeting was a little bit in advance, because 2 days later we will have in our hands the white paper, and although still is a white paper, that will be, we will have more information. But regarding, you see what the Commission proposed in that. The Commission proposed something that can be, in principle, there's not much definition on that. According to the executive summary they presented, as you probably, all of you have read it, they have different approaches in order to face the finance problems, including fair contribution mechanism, or identify large traffic generators who could invest in compression algorithms to reduce the costs, as an option. Another option pointed the consultation, said is the state debt granted by Recovery and Resilience Facility, which according to the document could help to close the gap between private investment forecasts and the total investment needed to reach 2030 connectivity goals. The problem with this is that when you mention state debts, then you have the problem of distortion and confrontation among member states, because not all of them has the same financial muscles in order to go on with this. And then the Commission really proposed an approach, very, let's say, broad and generic, based in what can be brand denominated as a collaborative scheme, basically. A collaborative scheme, it includes good faith, negotiation between large traffic generators, the LTG, and electronic communication networks. On the fee to be paid, this is, you have to collaborate, you have these problems, so be together, and then you agree on this, on that. Then introduce the possibility of a dispute resolution mechanism in cases of no solution. Then introduce arbitration procedures and a preference for a market-led framework based on bilateral negotiation. That's what the Commission, in principle, will see in the white paper, but in the executive summary of the analysis of the consultation, or the public consultation, it is like that. So here we are in one of the hot potatoes that has been there for a long time, which is how to finance all this, if it's necessary to provide with better conditions for go beyond the fragmentation of the market in the electronic communication sector, or use other models on that. I think all this will be present not only in the white paper, but in the debates in the second half of the year, once the elections, we had the election in June, mostly at the beginning of 2025. So I think this is that will be the moment in which the Commission has to really present something, deliver something, make some regulatory proposal, and I think it's absolutely urgent. I mean, Europe, you mentioned, you all, is lagging behind. We have very prominent companies in technologies, so helping the business sector, the SMEs, and so to the digitalization transformation. But what I see, yesterday I was participating in a debate in the TPN, and we have a speaker from the United States. And they said the venture capital is not here, is not investing here in Europe. They said that. I mean, you confirm or not, I don't know. But it is said that, and then this is a real problem. The venture capital, it is in UK, he said. It is, of course, in the States and other places. But we are year after year with a manufacturing industry that at the moment was a really global competitor. I think still it is the automobile one, but with a lot of problems, with the electric car in China, with this and that. And then we are just looking the landscape, but not really be very determined, with determination we need, I would say, to start with at political level. And that's the situation. So I think the next period, the next 5 years in Europe, we should stop maybe regulating so many things, yeah, and then to focus on those that really will take us, you know, in the way of, well, innovation and competition, yeah, you know.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pilar, and absolutely fully agree. We need to definitely give a regulatory break, I believe, on so many files, and we need to focus on the core ones. I particularly like that you mentioned the single market. As for those who were in the previous session as well, you must know that we at Digital Europe, we are big lovers of the single market. So sure. So great, thank you for that. And coming back to 6G and promises to our audience, I'm looking here at you, Rolf. Would you like to comment a little bit on the poll results?
So first of all, I fully understand, let's say, the pessimistic view when it comes to only these 40%, Because when you think about, monetization of the 5G, it's already a big challenge. So then thinking about the 6G by 2030, okay, who wants to invest in something where you have not monetized 5G yet? So this is definitely a challenge. But before I forget, Peter, I really enjoyed what you said about the IoT solutions and digital in Schneider Electric. We at Nokia have the Arena 2036 in Stuttgart, where we actually do test on 5G in-house with companies like Bosch, with companies like Mercedes, with a lot of startups, which actually is then the way to further exploit on 5G. Monetization being so important, we heard it a few times, 5G is for industrialization of and digitalization of a lot of our companies, and the applications need to come along. So that's very important. Robots, they make use, you can use it inside, but the moment they get outside of the shop floor, you lose connectivity. So you need 5G by definition. And the same applies to 6G, where you have much higher bandwidth. This can help. It's what we call at Nokia, the network that can sense and act. Of course, it's about sensing. Once you go into 6G, geolocation will be much better, much more precise. You can use drones in a, let's say, much better way. For example, once applied the slicing, you have a safe, secure, and trusted bandwidth that you can use in industrial applications, in transport logistics. Once it's a seaport, it's an airport, everywhere. And also, that will bring the possibility then to further invest. Once 5G is monetized to a certain extent, 6G will come along. That needs to be prepared now. So I repeat my invite also to whoever wants to come to Stuttgart. Arena 2036 is great. You can see 6G being tested with our Nokia Bell Labs. And that's something I think which we have to do. We have to test stuff, get to the startups, be innovative, and bring all the applications into play. If not, no one will invest. It's very simple. And we need, of course, your help.
Excellent. I really like the spirit, the energy here. So thank you very much for that. And Emilia, you were also very optimistic at the beginning of this panel. I hope you remain. And would you like to comment on 6G, please?
Yes, I am optimistic still because I was expecting worse results. So seeing that only 60% of people believe that we will not be the champions, for me it's a good, because in Europe we are pessimistic if we compare to the rest of the countries. So I completely agree. This is what we're doing in Slovenia as well with private 5G. So our regulator allocated the frequencies now that can be used in the industry and also by the municipalities, because this is what we want to do for the smart cities and the smart communities. But my final thought here is spectrum is a limited natural asset of each member state. Please don't forget that, and should be remained owned and managed by the member states. But I agree that we need, in some cases, a coordinated way for some policies, like 6G or others as well. So we need a coordinated timetable and way, but then again, it's the member states who should decide how they will use their natural assets. So that's the only thing I wanted to add.
Great, thank you very much, Emilia. And Peter, if I may end with you on an optimistic note. I'm sure it's an optimistic note from Schneider Electric on 6G, please.
Yeah, we see for 5 and also in the future for 6G lots of application fields, and I mentioned some of them, right? And we are actually using it in a large number of applications today. And I'm optimistic because the technology 5G, it's there, right? So there's no reason not to use it. And we need to encourage ourselves to really take best advantage of this existing technology, which even comes from Europe, right? So let's embrace it. And 6G will provide even more in terms of bandwidth, geolocation, and other features that come with that provides even more advantages. So it's not only on the companies providing the foundational technology, it's on all of us to maximize the use of this great technology.
Great. Thank you very much for sharing, and thank you very much to all the panelists for being with us today. We are right on time, our timer says. So thank you so much. I think it was a great discussion, and I think we really agree on so many points there, and of course also on many challenges ahead. So really looking forward to the publication, of course, of the white paper, looking forward to the technological developments in the coming months. We have your promises, we have your optimistic views, so that's fantastic, and we're very much looking forward to speaking to you in the next month. So thank you so much.